I still remember the lady at the holiday resort. Seeing you get what was coming to you still brings a smile to my face to this day. My family and I went on vacation to Crete. We stayed at a wonderful all-inclusive hotel right next to the beach. The food was good, and there were plenty of drinks available. The hotel had a pool and sunbeds, everything you need for a great time. As I think back, I realized that almost all the guests were from Denmark. In fact, I don't recall seeing anyone from other countries. And as it happens, I'm from Denmark too. There was a woman and her husband who were also staying at the hotel for the week. The husband was very quiet and seemed to be under her control, following her around everywhere. At first, we got used to her complaining at dinner and her bossy attitude towards the young holiday guides at the hotel, always marching up to them and nagging. But initially, we didn't find her too bothersome. My family and I love immersing ourselves in local culture. While exploring the city, we stumbled upon a hidden gem at the top of a tall hill, a tiny, authentic eatery. It wasn't a traditional restaurant, but rather a Greek woman's home kitchen, where she welcomed guests to enjoy her cooking on her terrace overlooking the sea. The setting was humble, but the food was incredibly delicious and genuine. The woman, who reminded us of a warm and caring mother, kept checking in on us, making the experience even more special. We ended up eating there a few times during our stay. One evening, as we were returning to the hotel, the woman who I'll call Karen approached us, looking upset. "Karen, how dare you?" she exclaimed. "US, what's wrong, Karen? You've paid for your all-inclusive meals, but then you don't even eat dinner here." "Us, we paid for it, so we can do what we want. If we want to eat somewhere else, that's our choice, Karen. Don't you think that's a huge waste?" As I'm sure they're used to it, Karen. "Well, I think it's disrespectful, and you should know better." We just laughed and walked away from her. The next day, Karen and her husband had booked a hike through a gorge. I think it was the Samaria Gorge. It's a nature reserve where you hike through the scenic area, ending up in a rural town that's only accessible by foot or boat. From there, you take a boat and then a bus to get back to the hotel. However, Karen and her husband weren't exactly in top physical condition. We found out what happened because Karen and her husband were absent at breakfast. When they finally arrived, her anger was palpable, and the whole hotel could feel the tension. We then saw a young hotel guide, probably around 18 to 20 years old, looking visibly shaken. As she approached us to comfort Karen, she shared the story of what had happened. So Karen and her husband had started the hike, but halfway through, they were completely exhausted and couldn't make it back. They were too far in, so they had to wait for donkeys to come from the rural town and carry them to the end of the trail. By the time they arrived, they had missed the last boat and were forced to spend the night in an overpriced hotel. The next morning, they took the boat and then the bus to finally get back to the hotel. After that, Karen remained upset for the rest of the holiday, but she didn't bother us again. She and her husband kept to themselves, sticking together in the corners and being much quieter. I felt a bit sorry for them, as they had ruined their own vacation. On the other hand, I was glad they didn't ruin ours, and their misadventure has given us plenty of laughs ever since. It must be exhausting to be so entitled, and I feel especially sorry for her husband, who seems to be trapped in her shadow. My heart goes out to him. Get it? I also have a lot of sympathy for the hotel staff, tour guides, and even the donkeys who had to deal with her. Really, anyone who has the misfortune of interacting with this woman deserves some pity.
Story 2.
My mom's story. If you're going to talk back to me, young lady, you can pack your bags and leave anytime. I've managed to piece together a family story that's been passed down. It's about my mom, who passed away in 2023, and her mom, my grandmother. Since I don't know the exact conversations that took place, I'll have to recreate them as best I can. Can you tell me, does this sound like entitlement? Let's go back to 1979. My mom was 16 years old at the time. She was living at home with a big household of 10 people, her parents, 4 siblings, and 4 adult relatives. Her grandfather worked at a factory and made a good income, and the relatives also contributed to the household earnings. So, no one was struggling financially. My mom had just started working at McDonald's and quickly proved herself to be a hard worker. She managed to balance her schoolwork, social life, and family responsibilities without letting her grades slip. When my mom got her first paycheck, she was thrilled. She had big plans and was thinking about buying music 8-tracks. Tapes and records were all the rage back then. She was a happy teenager, that is, until she got home. As soon as she announced her first paycheck, Grandma took her aside and said, "Hey kiddo, I know you're excited, but I need you to help out with the household expenses." My mom let out a disappointed sigh. She said, "But Mom, what about the senior trip in 2 years?" I wanted to save some of this money and have a little fun, but her mother's expression turned stern. "I know, honey, but we need to think about the family and our household expenses." Grandma's guilt trip eventually worked, and my mom reluctantly signed over her paycheck to her. By the way, minimum wage was $2.90 back then, so her paychecks were around $118 to $118 to $127 each. Even though it was a lot of money for a young teenager in the 70s and 80s, my mom was still disappointed. Seeing the look on her daughter's face, Grandma offered a compromise. "Tell you what, I can put half of your paycheck into a savings account with my bank. They're offering really high interest rates right now. You can save up for a rainy day and collect the money later." My mom thought this was a fair deal. Grandma even gave her $5 as an allowance, which seemed generous at the time. After a year of handing over her paychecks, my mom wanted to see how much she had saved, but when she asked Grandma to show her the account, Grandma refused. My mom started to feel suspicious, but she still trusted her mother a little. However, her trust was shattered 6 months later when she discovered the truth. My mom found a monthly statement that revealed there was no special savings account. Confronting her mother, Grandma took her aside and essentially admitted, "Your adult siblings are struggling, so I wanted to help them out. I've been sending them some money each week, basically cash in envelopes. I divided your paychecks among them, and I was planning to pay you back eventually," Grandma said in a casual, matter-of-fact tone. My mom was stunned by her mother's words. She was 17, almost 18, and couldn't believe what she was hearing. She asked softly, "But what if I wanted to leave home or go to college?" Grandma cut in, her tone gentle but firm. "I assumed you'd stick with your job for now. Since you weren't actively applying to colleges or making any plans to leave, I thought you'd just stay here at home and continue working." My mom shot back with a sassy remark, which escalated into a heated argument. The exchange went back and forth until Grandma finally said, "If you're going to talk back to me like that, young lady, you can pack your bags and leave anytime."